Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. Got two things for you this morning. The first is something that I promise isn't from the Onion. It's actually for real. There was a bill proposed in California that would have required teens up to 16 years old to sit in booster seats, safety seats, and would have disallowed children up to the age of 13 from sitting in the front passenger seat. Once again, for safety. This is, to use a fancy word, the etiolation, it's a medical term meaning the progression, of the sickness of the safety cult. Because there's no end to it, is there? You know, once you accept that X is necessary for safety, then Y is. There's no real way to call a halt to it. Because you can always say that whatever it is you're proposing, no matter how abstract, might be in the interests of safety. So you can draw a line going all the way back to the early mid-1960s when the proposal was first floated that all new vehicles ought to be required by law to have seatbelts. And at the time, that seemed like a somewhat reasonable proposal. I would have objected to it for reasons that you can probably divine just by listening to this video, because I don't think anybody should be forced to buy anything. I don't think people should be forced to buy helmets to ride a bicycle or a motorcycle either, because I'm one of those kooky weirdo libertarians who believes that people ought to be free to assume risks as well as rewards and to be held responsible for their own choices, not this one-size-fits-all regime imposed on people by a busybody government, which is what we've got. Anyway, so the first thing that happened was that they passed laws requiring that all new vehicles be equipped with safety belts. And what do you think happened next? Well, what happened next was absolutely inevitable. And that was that laws were passed requiring people to wear them. Of course, at first they didn't tell you that, did they? At first, oh, it was just going to be nice to have cars with seatbelts in them. You know, if you had half a brain, you realize that inevitably they were going to say that, yep, you got to wear the seat belts. So then we got mandatory buckle-up laws, and that began to happen in the 80s. And then shortly thereafter, what happened next? Well, we started getting mandatory child safety seat laws. And again, note that it was never the case that people who felt the need to wear a seatbelt or to have a child safety seat could not freely choose to wear a seatbelt, could not freely choose to buy a child safety seat. They had those when I was a kid. There were a few people who used them, but most of us kids didn't buckle up back in the 70s and the 80s. Believe it or not, yep, you millennials and Zers and all of that are hearing a Gen Xer tell you what the world used to be like once upon a time. Anyway, so the reductio ad absurdum is finally here. You know, if it's important to put a 5-year-old in a child safety seat, then why not a 10-year-old? For that matter, why not a 12 or 13-year-old? Why not an adolescent? Why not a 16-year-old? That's how ridiculous it's getting. Inevitably, probably, they're going to say we all adults have to sit in a child safety seat too. Because if it's safe for a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old, well, it's probably safe for us too. Now, I mock it, but you know, it's a serious thing because it's so tyrannical and it's also just so insulting. The way they are, first of all, you know, there's a duality here. They're infantilizing the children. You know, a 13 or 14-year-old is basically being made to feel as if they're a toddler. Or I have to strap them in for safety. But that's also infantilizing and degrading the adults, isn't it? Because it's also taking away the parents' ability to decide what's appropriate for their children. And implicit in that is that these busybodies know better for you what's right for your kids. And that's degrading, isn't it? Because, you know, you're a competent adult, but you're denied the former right to make decisions for yourself and for your kids. Remember, these busybodies think somehow that your kids belong to them in a really meaningful way because they want to tell you what you can do with your kids. And that's an assertion of ownership via control. So it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until the whole premise of safetyism is thrown in the freaking toilet where it belongs. It's become neurotic. It always was neurotic, frankly. Life is about risk. Everything associated with living is risky. The only way you can eliminate risks is to be dead, inert, to be biological matter in the ground somewhere. Then it's very safe. Nothing's going to happen then other than decay. So anyway, I've got an article up at EP Autos, or rather I will. It's going to be the lead article for tomorrow, which is Monday. Now, as the other thing. It's a shorter thing. I went to Lowe's yesterday to get some things, and I live in Southwest Virginia in a formerly rural. It's less rural now, and I'm getting to that part of the state. And I discovered, to my sadness and chagrin, that many of the sections where you go to find things like, for example, bundles of home wiring and tools and so on, are now behind locked doors. So if you want to get something like that, you have to find a guy to open up the case for you to get the thing. And the reason for that is that they apparently have a problem with scumbags stealing things. Now, of course, there's always been a problem in this country with scumbags stealing things, but it's gotten so much worse. And one of the reasons it's gotten worse is they don't do anything about the scumbags. I've read and found out that apparently a number of these stores have this no confrontation policy, where if some douchebag grabs something, stuffs it in his pants or whatever, and walks out the door, their policy is not to challenge them, because they don't want any trouble. You know who else said that? Ned Beatty in Deliverance. Look here, we don't want any trouble here. And you saw what happened to Ned. Well, what happened to Ned is happening to all of us as a result of this. Now we all have to live as if we're criminals. Does it sound familiar? Kind of like what happens when you want to go fly on an airplane, and even though the worst you've ever done in your life is get a traffic ticket, but now you're treated as if you're a presumptive terrorist, and you have to let some government goon touch you, touch your groin. If you're a woman, touch your breasts, rifle through your possessions, because you might be a terrorist. You might be a terrorist. Just like, if you happen to be out on the road and they're having one of those sobriety checkpoints, you've done absolutely nothing to give anybody any indication that you might be drunk. Nonetheless, you have to stop your car, you gotta talk to the government geek, and you gotta, if he decides that you're suspicious, you gotta prove you're not a drunk, even to the extent of having to let them draw your blood. So, there's a lot of common threads running through this stuff, which I wanted to talk about. That's the gist of it. These two stories are not directly or obviously related, and yet they are, aren't they? So, that's all I've got for now. More over at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. Thanks as always for listening to me go on. If you like these videos, please hit the proverbial like button and let other people know. And I hope you'll come by EP Autos as well and check out all the other stuff there. Got tons of stuff, everything from new car reviews to old car stuff. And we have a nice comment section, and I say it's nice because you can actually post your comments there without having to pay. I don't charge people to speak freely or limit their reach if they don't pay. So you might appreciate that. Anyway, thanks again, and we'll catch up again soon.